Hello Internet, I'm Zon, and welcome back to another Let's Play. Now, with the recent work I've been doing with the Steam games and things like Them's Fightin' Herds, it seems like it's been a while since I went and played through some of the old school titles on the NES. That's sort of what I had focused on since I started doing Let's Play videos on the channel here. I figured as a way to get back to that and sort of break things up, I would do a Let's Play of one of my favorite games on the NES. Probably one that billions of people have done Let's Plays of and everyone is praised to death at this point. This is Mega Man 2. I would probably rate Mega Man 2 within my top 5 games on the NES library. It's one of my favorites. It is the game that got me into the Mega Man series, and I got a lot of good memories playing this one back in the day. So I figured it'd be good to dust off the rust a little bit, go back and see how well I remember this game since I haven't played through it in quite some time. We'll go ahead and get started here. Going through it on normal first. Depending how long this first run takes, I might mess around with doing a difficult mode run or maybe a weapon specific run. We'll see. I don't know how long this is going to take, so I want to just jump in and try and play through the game how I remember it. Now, if you're a person who's never heard of the Mega Man franchise, it has been around a while, but I understand maybe not everybody's played games in the series. Mega Man started out on the NES as a 2D platforming action game made by Capcom, and they made a lot of games in the Mega Man series. They had a lot of spin-offs, they had a lot of sort of tangential things that were tied into the series, and the franchise itself was really big, but Capcom kind of hadn't been paying much attention to Mega Man in the last few years. I know they're getting ready to release a new Mega Man on current consoles that's sort of a throwback to the original style of two-dimensional games with, I believe it's 3D graphics, but two-dimensional gameplay and movement. But from a mechanics standpoint, I'll sort of briefly go through things as we play through the game here. I understand most people have probably seen Mega Man 2. It's probably the most famous of the old school ones. But upon starting the game, we get a stage select screen where we can fight all of the different boss enemy robots, or robot masters I think they're called in this. This game was sort of unique in that it gave you the option to choose what order you played through the stages in. And I'm gonna sort of go through how I used to play this back in the day. I know it's probably not the most optimized way to play through the game, but that's okay because I'm not doing a speed run here. I'm probably gonna die a whole lot. And this is really more of a memory lane type deal as opposed to a speed run. But I always started with Metal Man. One, because he was one of my favorite designs, and two, because his weapon is very, very powerful. Right away, we're dropped into the stage, and Metal Man's stage is sort of a mechanical factory, and these conveyor belts push you in different directions. This is an energy tank. I can use it to refill my life. One thing I'll just say right away that I'm sure everyone has stated multiple times when they talk about this game: Mega Man 2 has an incredible soundtrack. One of the best on the system, I think. The composers working for Capcom that wrote the stage tracks for the series in general have done a phenomenal job. I would probably rate Mega Man 2's soundtrack in my top 5 as well for NES soundtracks. At some point, I should probably do some top 10 videos or something explaining, at least for the old school platforms, where things fall in my list of quote-unquote the greatest according to childhood and everything else. That's something I might look at in the future, especially since playing through some newer Nintendo games, or playing through Nintendo games more recently that I never played back in the day. I think my top 5 countdown, or top 10 I would do, of all of games on the platform have probably changed a little bit. That might be an interesting thing to experiment with in the future. As you proceed here on the conveyor belts up there, that's a 1-up. I can't get it because I don't have a certain weapon that'll allow me to get up to that platform, so we're just going to move on. Overall, the levels in Mega Man 2 are not terribly long. The game is paced pretty well in that you go through each of the levels, you navigate the specific hazards or other level-specific gimmicks, then you get to the boss, you fight the boss, and then you move on to the next level. And I'll sort of explain the whole boss and weapon mechanic once we get there. I know way back before speedrunning was really a thing, when I was in school, I tried doing my own speedruns of this game just in competition with one of my roommates at the time. And I think my best time, again not optimizing for speedruns, was about 39 minutes. And that was really blazing through the game. We'll see how we do here, especially since I'm probably going to be rusty having not played this game in a while. Here's our first boss, Metal Man. He's kind of like a ninja. He jumps up and down, throwing his metal blades at you, and then the conveyor belt switches and moves either away or towards him. But as you can see, he's pretty weak to the Mega Buster, your default arm cannon. I think that's why Metal Man's usually one of the recommended first bosses for people to take down. His weapon's really powerful, his stage isn't too difficult, and overall, it's a pretty straightforward fight. On this screen, the equipment screen, would be a good time to mention the weapon mechanics for those who've never played Mega Man. When you beat one of the bosses, you get their weapon. And usually it's got a specific name and a color coding. In this case, dark green is the metal blade. Now Mega Man has the ability to switch to that weapon when he's exploring levels or fighting bosses and use the metal blade as a sort of secondary weapon with its own consumable ammo, which we'll see in a sec. Now that I have that weapon, it's going to make at least half the bosses a lot easier. I think what I'll do is I will go Bubble Man next. Again, I'm not doing this in the most optimized way, but because I have Metal Man's weapon, it's going to make a bunch of bosses a lot easier. If we press start, we get to the inventory screen, and by scrolling through, we can switch to weapons, and this is the metal blade. It's the gear weapon he was throwing at us, and it can be thrown in 8 directions, and it does not deplete very rapidly, which is why it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Not a whole lot's immune to it. It fires quickly in all the different directions, and you get a lot of it, so it's pretty much allowing you to blaze through the game a lot faster once you have it. In some of the later stages where a lot of enemies are coming at you from all angles, being able to throw it in 8 directions is pretty handy. You can even hit guys that are above and below you like that. For the sake of trying to do this relatively quickly, I'll probably be using the metal blade for the majority of the game in this playthrough. Now, proceeding along, I guess we were sort of walking across a dam, and now we're underwater in Bubble Man's stage. The black spike things on the top are hazards. If I touch them, I will instantly die. These mechanical Metroid jellyfish things just descend and they sort of swarm if you let them on the screen for too long. But Bubble Man's stage teaches you about environmental hazards like the insta-death spikes. We have lanternfish robots that shoot shrimp at you. And like I sort of demonstrated, the jumping mechanics are a little bit different underwater. If I hold the button down, I can jump pretty much to the ceiling. which is why I gotta tap the button a little bit and be careful, otherwise I'll go head first into the spikes and die. Right there you can see getting these are weapon energy power-ups that will fill the secondary bar to the left of my life. And like I mentioned before, because Bubble Man's weapon is so cheap to use, and energy power-ups are somewhat plentiful, whoops, it's easy to keep his weapon topped out. And I was not paying attention to the crabs, and fell off the platform for death number 1. I'm sure as I try and remember all of the ins and outs of this game, I'm going to make a lot of stupid mistakes. Which is... it's a good thing this is not a speed run. Really more of just laid back playthrough of one of my favorite games. Until I get to the later stages and die a lot. It looks like the lanternfish, which aren't really mini-bosses, but they don't come back if I continue from where the midpoint of the stage was at. That's nice. Let's see if I can be a little bit more careful here. Alright. The Dr. Wily door is always the entrance to the boss room. We're already here at the boss. Again, the levels are not terribly long. And here we have Bubble Man. He's kind of a scuba diver guy. He goes up, he shoots bubbles at you, he has an arm cannon, and he's really weak to the metal blade, so he dies insanely fast. Moving on here on the equipment screen for defeating Bubble Man, we get the Bubble Lead. I always called it Bubble Lead because it's gray, it's lead colored. I don't know if it's supposed to be Bubble Lead or Bubble Lead. We'll go with Lead for now. Someone in the comments who's more familiar with the lore, I'm sure, will correct me if I'm wrong.